Welcome to Share, a podcast production of Amethyst Recovery Centers. I'm your host, Kabir Singh. At the top of each episode, we like to remind our listeners that addiction is treatable and recovery is possible. If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, call Amethyst today at 855-80-SOBER or visit us online at amethystrecoverycenters.com. Teyana Johnson works as a client services manager at the nonprofit Moveable Feast by day, but on evenings and weekends, she's an alcohol and drug counselor at Mountain Manor Treatment Center in Maryland. While Teyana is not in recovery herself, she's incredibly passionate about her work in the recovery field. Today, we're going to hear from Teyana about what brings her to this work and why it means so much to her. Hi, Teyana. Welcome to Share.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Really, really happy to have you here. Valuable spaces that you're working in. You know, by day, you're working at Moveable Feast.
Yes.
That I like to think that I'm pretty dialed in. I've heard of different organizations. So Moveable Feast, does that sound? To me, it sounds like something involved with possibly food, bringing meals to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So yes, Moveable Feast is a nonprofit located in Baltimore City. And our main mission is to provide people living with critical illnesses like HIV and AIDS, cancer, diabetes. So we provide them with nutrition meals. We do nutrition counseling. We do medical transportation to get them back and forth to their appointments. So pretty much like we just believe that food is medicine. So anybody living with critical illnesses in the Baltimore City and the surrounding county, Baltimore City, it's open to receive services from us.
So it really sounds like wraparound services, not just just delivering meals.
Yes.
Way more. Yeah. So during the pandemic period, which is a long time at this point, have you seen a pronouncement in the needs there, like with those services, or they're essentially the same? I suppose the people with these illnesses, oftentimes the pandemic has little effect on that. They remain isolated. They remain without ability to transport and the like. Has it been an increase in what, or is it the same?
Absolutely. It definitely, when COVID first hit in March, we definitely seen like a hike in service requests and applications and phone calls. When we first were quarantined to our houses and working from home, it was a big struggle to keep up with the need. Now, I guess it's getting a lot easier. We have a lot more, more funding. We were struggling in the beginning, being able to serve all the people who needed our services, to where our wait list kind of jumped up to about 180 to 200 people. But at this point, with all the new funding sources that are coming in due to COVID, we have been able to continue to provide services throughout the year to our normal clients, as well as adding on clients who kind of came to us from isolation, who might have had COVID and couldn't leave to get meals, or don't have the family members that could go and shop for them since you can't really get out. So yeah, definitely through COVID, our services has been requested a lot more, and we're just finally trying to find this balance of being able to give them the service they need and get people on and off service, as well as provide them with the normal toiletries. So we did care packages with masks and hygiene products and hand sanitizer. So just continue to get help from our funders and our volunteers has actually helped us out to continue to provide services through this dreadful long year.
That's so great. It's certainly positive to hear that there's increased funding available around that.
Yes.
I would hope that would have been the case, and it's good to hear it as well, because there's a lot of places that are falling short with that. And so at Moveable Feast, because as I mentioned about you when I was opening up here in the opening statement, you are an alcohol and drug counselor as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you do? Is that a component that you fulfill there, or is it different?
It's completely different.
Okay.
At Moveable Feast, I'm just the client services manager, although I can say our clients may suffer from addictions or be in recovery, but it's just not services we predominantly offer there. We kind of stick to the food services mission. So I'm addictions counselor, and it's kind of weird. My story kind of started at Moveable Feast, how I got introduced to this world of addiction and recovery. But no, I do not provide any services at Moveable Feast for that field.
So you kind of read my mind on that. laid out some breadcrumbs there. So that was my next question. And so you're, again, as I mentioned in the opening kind of remarks, while you're not in recovery yourself, you do work in addiction. And which location of Mountain Manor? I think there's two, right? Or
it's multiple ones. I work at the Sykesville location.
Gotcha.
And there's actually two in Sykesville, the one I work at, and then there's one called Shoemaker, just like right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
There's one in the city, Baltimore City, off of like Frederick Avenue, I believe. There's another one in Aldersburg. So they have many, many locations in Maryland.
Yeah, I've been to the one in Emmitsburg, I think out there.
Yes.
I spoke at a unit there that I think their folks are incarcerated, a male incarceration. They're incarcerated while receiving treatment, but specific name for it. But so valuable organization you work for. I'm a recipient of services, as I disclosed to you before we started this, but the listeners may not know. I'm a recipient of treatment services from Maryland Treatment Center, so it's specifically Avery Road, and I hold that place dear to my heart. So what got you, what drew you to the addiction treatment field?
I kind of just fell into it. It's a weird story, but a few years ago, before I kind of started my employment at Moveable Feast, I found this culinary training program that Moveable Feast offered. So pretty much like I was looking for a training program to get a job. So I came to Moveable Feast, I completed the training program. And part of the training program, they give you an internship that you have to work in some type of restaurant or food operation to finish the program. And I was pretty much did my internship at Gaudenzia. So it was a 2-week internship. I worked there at Gaudenzia and actually got offered a position there. So going into it, I had no clue what addiction was, what recovery was, but just the experience of working with them in the kitchen, because they have clients who help in the kitchen. A lot of people who work at Gaudenzia were in recovery as well. So just the atmosphere. Yeah.
Great. If you don't know about it, a 2-week crash course at Gaudenzia, you'll find out. That's
right.
Sure.
So it was great. Like pretty much it just drew me in, like the people there, whether it was the clients or the staff. Like I really didn't have a purpose. Like I had no clue why I was there, but I was just drawn to it. Like the atmosphere and the vibe of everything, and just hanging out with the clients there just kind of made me want to stay. So I did take part-time employment there, as well as being offered part-time employment at Moveable Feast when I first started. So that was somehow I jumped from having a business degree into the human services field at Moveable Feast and at Gaudenzia at the same time. Both just part-time at that time.
Right. No, I mean, they're often, it's often said that either volunteer positions or internships are like that. I know I often talk about it in the treatment settings that I might find myself in doing peer work. I'm a certified peer in Maryland, so I often do work related to that or step in. That those types of volunteer or internships can lead to all sorts of different avenues of either full-time employment or the like, and so it seems like that. So what in specific? I have sort of no other way to put this. A lot of times, folks get exposed to addiction like, yo, that's crazy. Like I can't deal with that. Run the other way.
Right.
Is there something with the population that's that 2 weeks, right? You're at like Gaudenzia, so something struck you.
Right.
What was it about that particular field? Because it can look like a mess.
It definitely did. I can say I was very green to this subject. So everything was surprising, but it was just so interesting and intriguing at the same time. But I would say what really got me was just, it was, I guess at Gaudenzia at the location in Park Heights, it had a women's unit. So some of the ladies who worked in the kitchen at night, they would always do reflections. And they would invite me to the reflections. So I would go down and listen, and you hearing people's stories and just hearing about like what they're going through throughout the day. So it would be my turn and I'd have to share what I was reflecting on. And it's like finding myself crying, listening to other people's stories, or crying, telling them like what I'm reflecting on for that day, and just knowing, like just feeling that understanding that they all got it. They all understood that like I'm working and I'm missing my kids and they're all going through the same thing. So it's like even though I was not in recovery, like we were feeling the same things. Like we were all going through the same thing. They understood and they were so supportive of me, and I'm not in recovery. And it should have been like the opposite, but you just felt like you were a part of a group, like a part of a team or a family. Like, I think that's what really made me stay. Like a lot of those people that I started out with in my internship, I'm still friends with. I worked with for years and years until I switched to a new facility. But you really do make like lifelong friends, and they're just, this is support, and just the camaraderie in those type of environments is just way different than what you get outside of recovery.
Yeah, that is certainly, so what you described is not like unlike anything I've experienced many times. It's sort of, it's there's 12-step, of course, and there's all sorts of settings of recovery, right? There's at a baseline, it's a therapeutic value of one of us humans. Forget even about the labels, one an alcoholic to another, one addict to another. So one of us humans to another on a baseline level, just bringing all the barriers down and sharing what's going on, realizes, that we're more alike than different. That's what I heard there from you, and that's really heartwarming to hear. And I was going to have this question, but you sort of answered it. Is like, well, what can folks in recovery, how could they be useful to you? And you already just detailed that so well. So I'd like to talk about service. You're also often of service, both at Mountain Manor and Moveable Feast. Mm-hmm. Where did that instinct of yours come from, that being of service?
I would have to say probably from my mother. She was a nurse, and rest in peace. She passed away a few years ago, but just all my life, I just remember her being so helpful, like to us, to strangers, to like throwing football parties for my brother's whole football team, like cooking, or just, she was just always doing something for someone, whether it's visiting people in the hospital, like she worked in nursing homes. So she just always had that spirit of like trying to help as many people as possible, even if it was like detrimental to herself. So it was just very humbling to see somebody work so hard. Like she had 5 kids, but yet she made a way to make sure everybody around her, including our cousins, sisters, friends, like everybody knew her and loved her. So she was just very warm and welcoming. And I just felt like I was always the opposite. So I really don't understand how I got here. Like I went to school for business. Like I was very strategic in my career goals. Like that's what I was doing. But it just took a different path for me. And like my mom had passed away while I'm working at Moveable Feast. And in one of we do like this big fundraiser right for the feast. And at the end of it, some of our clients come and they speak and they share their story. And one day it just so happened that one of the clients who shared their story had a story of addiction as well. And it just clicked for me. Like I was crying in this program, listening to this lady's story. And it just reminded me of my mom, and it reminded me of my dad, and just reminded me of all my family members who are going through addiction or living in recovery now. It just made me realize why I was there, like why I'm working at Moveable Feast and why I'm working at Gaudenzia at the time, at the same time, to where I was missing the connection. I just enjoyed what I was doing, but it all just came full circle when I finally heard this lady's story and it connected me to everything.
That's incredible. Yeah, I'm sorry, you were about to finish something saying.
No, I'm good. I'm finished.
Okay. My father is the same way. He's still with us. He's going to be 83 this year, and very interesting how you brought up, she was always helping others, perhaps to the detriment of herself. And,
right.
And I know one of the things I have sought to do for myself is, while I have taken on so many positive attributes of my father, I seek to be in service of others, carry the message, whatever it tends to be contexted as. I try to be more cognizant of stopping short of the detriment of myself today. I'm not so sure my father, really knew that I wanted him to be more present at sporting events, right? Versus like working all the time and to provide this life. Do you think that you with your higher education, whether it had been in business school or even what you've learned by real life, that you two are able to draw those boundaries today, maybe stop a little bit short where your mom was, that detriment to self-care and other aspects that are needed in this line of work, right? Whether Movable
Right.
Feast or Mountain Manor.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still learning those boundaries, definitely. But you do realize definitely in the recovery field, you always hear about the burnout period of being a counselor or working in a field to where it's you take in so much of other people that you have to kind of find a way to let it go and not let it bother and affect your life when you go home. And that's something I struggle with in a good way and a bad way. Or just feeling like you always have to, like, if I have a client who needs something, you just feel like, well, I can just go do this. I can get it. I can have it. It's so easy for me to give it to them instead of like, no, like you're stepping outside of your boundaries. Like, you don't need to do this. You don't have to provide for these clients. There's other ways you can help. So I definitely feel like there's certain boundaries as far as getting too invested into somebody's recovery or just spending so much time. I know there was days and days where I was missing sporting events or school activities because I'm working, and like we all have goals and like I have to do this work, I have to be here for these clients, or like if I'm just indulged, like I'm working 2 jobs, that sometimes you're going to miss things, you're not going to have enough time for your own family. So I have been taking more steps back lately, especially since COVID hit, just to take time for me and my kids for family trips, whether we're just in the house or we're just spending time, and make sure I'm not missing any big events. But I think being in the recovery field, you hear so much about people missing out on those activities that you realize how important they are. So yeah, it definitely took me a while when I first started. I was younger then, so like working was important, and like providing for my family was important, but you still have to find that balance of being able to provide and still be there mentally and spiritually for my family as well. It's definitely something that I still try to keep in a balanced manner, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, has the balance worked better? I don't know if necessarily, right now or whatever. Are telehealth services are a big thing. So are
Yeah.
you able? Is your work-life balance better for you in this new realm of telehealth, which is emerging, and I do believe here to stay?
Mm-hmm.
Is the balance? Is it easier to strike for you?
It's easier, definitely for Moveable Feast, since I can work from home and I'm here with my kids that are home at school. It's definitely giving me more time with them, and I feel like it's helped and it has hurt at times. Doing counseling sessions through telehealth, it has been a struggle. It's just harder to make that connection when you're not face to face, when it doesn't feel as personable. But I just feel like it just takes more time. But eventually, like it's just second nature. You feel like you're having a regular conversation. Eventually, once you get that rapport with your client. So I think in the beginning of telehealth services in the addiction world, it was hard, but you find a way around it, and you still feel like you're connecting with your client, and it works. But definitely in the human services field, my morning job, like being able to be home around my family and help out with school and help out with homework and still be able to help the clients that we're helping with through Moveable Feast, it's definitely been amazing to just get this extra time to spend with my family, and I can still get my work done at the same time. So
Yeah,
definitely.
I'll definitely say it's a challenge. But every so often I'll be drawn into some operational stuff here, with on the treatment center side of what we do here, and it's tough finding qualified counselors and clinicians right now, because everyone's found this really comfortable space of what you just talked about. And while I agree this is a face-to-face, while the name describes human services, right?
Right.
We are by design, I do believe, meant to be in person with one another, and I think that's where a lot of the good work happens. But once connections are established, telehealth does work, just as well as
Yes.
I feel for the ones today, those recipients of care that are just coming out of detox, and they're like right into telehealth from the beginning. Like there's nothing that was in person ever. So it's a strange time to be getting integrated into recovery, whatever that looks like. So with some of the challenges you mentioned, are there any sort of standouts to you, some of the bigger challenges that you face as a drug and alcohol counselor, maybe what you do at Mountain Manor more so than Moveable Feast? Are there challenges there?
I would say I think one of my biggest challenges personally would be that I'm not in recovery. Some people see that as an issue. Some people don't feel like you're going to understand or you're able to connect, or you've been through what I've been through. So how can you tell me how to make it out or what I should do? That's always one of the biggest ones. It's always, not saying I try to hide it or keep it from people. If you ask me, of course, I'm be honest about it, but I just feel like I can bring a different perspective to the recovery field. Our experiences are pretty much the same. It's a little different, but we're all going through the same thing, but I have a different perspective on it since I'm not in recovery. So that's one of the biggest things that I kind of have to work through with new clients who might see me, or people who's been in recovery and addiction for a really long time. And they just believe like, if you haven't been through it, you don't know what I'm going through mentality. So that's one of my biggest challenges. I would also say just being able to disconnect when you invest a lot of time, a lot of energy into clients because you want them to succeed. And if they don't want the same thing for themselves, it's hard. And then when I first started out, I think the reality of death in this field, it was scary to me. It wasn't something that I was used to. So when I first started out working in recovery centers or treatment centers, if people relapse or if people overdosed, it just was so real because you knew these people. Like, you can hear about it on the news, you can hear about it on social media, just seeing posts. But when you physically know these people and they're overdosing, and you like, this person was in our facility 2 weeks ago or a month ago, that was very hard for me to kind of be able to move past, like losing your own personal clients that you built these rapport with for 6 months, and they make it out and they're doing great, and then all of a sudden you hear some bad news. That's always been tough. I think I'm just too loving and too caring, and it's hard for me to disconnect once people are no longer in my care services. So
yeah, that is a very stark reality of being in this line of work. I mean,
yes.
Even over the last decade, at an accelerated pace, certainly last half a dozen years, it's just the amount of loss is just incredible. I hope you're doing what you need to do personally to take care of yourself in that regard. And
absolutely.
I could also relate to what you're talking about. It's just like, there's some problems are, not to diminish the client or the recipient of care's needs, but some really, really simple stuff. Hey, I can solve this problem right now for them. And then I'm just fostering behavior that is really the core of the problem. So
right.
It's really difficult to draw those lines. And especially as a peer specialist, we have like, you can disclose anything, you can meet clients, at whatever. There's just like, that's why I went for it. One, I'm not as smart as you to do anything past like, going to college or any of that, getting any sort of degrees like that. So I decided to go the route where like, you all can't stop me from, meeting clients outside at meetings and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the easy thing to do here. How can I get, a habitual rule breaker between an active addiction?
Did not pass our ethics class.
Yeah. So let's sort of flip that around. Your biggest rewards. I think you've talked a lot about that. Let's maybe just one, the biggest reward, if that's even possible.
I think it's the simplest thing is seeing people make it out and have that long-term sobriety. I think it's not even clients when they complete their 6 months and they graduate from your program. Like, I'm talking about seeing somebody 3-4 years from now, whether it's on social media or you run into them in person, and they're doing great. They're working, they have a family, they're sponsoring other people, like they're still doing meetings. Just those type of moments, it's like that's when you really feel like you've accomplished something, like you've meant something to somebody, when somebody can come back and say thank you, like, oh my God, like when I was at this place with you, I had such a great time, I learned so much, I was able to do this and that. Just those moments, which may at times feel like it's very small and far in between those moments, but when it does happen, it just shows like, this is why you're here. This is what you're working for. This is what it all comes down to. Just even if it's one person out of 10 years, you feel like you've done something for someone. to better their life. So that's like the biggest reward I can ask for.
Yeah, I can relate to that, seeing that here. I experienced that myself when I went to back to Avery Road to thank a counselor. On the third day I was there, it was like so many, I was thinking about walking out the door, and the counselor put his hand on my shoulder and said, why don't you sleep on it? It was nighttime, so why don't you stay the night, see how you feel in the morning, and what a difference 24 hours would make. I woke up profoundly different the next morning and decided to stay the rest of the episode of care. And so I went back years later to thank that counselor, and it just so happened in the day that day in that parking lot, he came out, and we were high-fiving and hugging. I think easily 4 years later, I happened to show up on his 25th wedding. Anyways, the end of that story was like we're both crying in the parking lot, with joy about and just like you outlined. He said, "This is why we do this work," and that's why I continue to stick and stay, because it's not easy. If there's one thing, Teyana, that people in recovery need to know about those who are struggling with addiction, what would you say it is?
One thing that I always try to explain to people is that they're no different than us. I always just have like this motto of people that are in addiction or recovery, they made one bad decision and it has stuck with them. I was like, we all make bad decisions, but our decision just led us down a different path. So my bad decision in life may not have been drugs and alcohol, but I've made bad decisions that left me in a really bad place in my life. So it's like, you can't judge people. So I just always say, like, I'd rather be that one person in that one moment to make that one good decision to help somebody out of addiction and recovery, instead of being that one person in that one moment when they need you and you're tearing them down, or you're not there for them, you're not supportive. You just never know. And miracles happen all the time. So why not be that one person that makes that good decision to help somebody that could change their life?
Well, there you have it, folks. From Teyana herself, miracles happen all the time, and it's better to be on the side of trying to help rather than to not. Teyana's passion for her work shows us that being a drug and alcohol counselor can be incredibly fulfilling and meaningful. Teyana, thank you for sharing your experience with us today and joining us on Share.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me again. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Of course. If you or a loved one needs help with addiction, call Amethyst today at 855-80-SOBER or visit us online at amethystrecoverycenters.com. You can find all episodes of Share at amethystrecoverycenters.com/share or download episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Share. I'm Kabir Singh, and we'll see you next time.